clarify something from the last video that I made. I'm not necessarily saying what's right or wrong as far as this whole issue of egalitarian. Just that, obviously, I'm personally more of a traditionalist. But the question is, we have to understand how to fight battles, which battles to fight, and then also we have to ask ourselves, are we creating these issues? Meaning, are people leaving orthodoxy because of issues of praxis that are essentially minhag and so forth? Meaning, and that's across the board. For the most part, it's not really so. Meaning, most of these people who are leaving Torah probably wouldn't be from if you would offer them a quote-unquote easier or more, there's this term that they call Mikori, like the Rambam is this, that, whatever, going back to the sources, which people claim to be more authentic. Not so clear to say, how do you define what's authentic and what's inauthentic, but I don't know if so many people would be attracted to a Torah lifestyle if it were bare bones halachic, but there are many people you'd be surprised. I mean, there's also, like a friend of mine, he points out, there are people who women don't cover their hair and they wear pants, but they won't eat Hebrew National. This type of approach and is intellectually honest and this and that. Now, I wouldn't eat Hebrew National, but I'm Hasidish, I wear shtreimel, it makes sense for me not to eat Hebrew National, but am I saying that someone eats Hebrew National eating treif? Of course not, especially now. Rabbi Ralbag came in, he maybe years ago had many more problems. I still wouldn't label it treif, but the same thing. We have to be cognizant of what's halacha, what's minhag, what's the reasons why we follow different things. Meaning it's been accepted. Why? Because the OU accepted Chol of Stam, so it's been accepted. But like I said before, but Gvina Sakum, it's not accepted. Why? Because the OU didn't accept it. And the thing is, we have to be cognizant of, well, what is actually the halacha? What is minhag? What opinions exist that permit, because what kind of statements are we making? When we take a stand on certain issues, when we don't take a stand on certain issues. And it's the same thing with this egalitarian issue, meaning, are we pushing people to reform and conservative because of the stance on egalitarianism? Now the question is, are we getting rid of people that we don't need? Maybe yes. Are we, but the thing is, there are many very sincere people, like what people will say is, this woman, she puts on tefillin. You hear this a lot from people say, this woman puts on tefillin, but she doesn't keep kashrus and taras mishpacha and Shabbos and this and that. Well, what if she did? Would you still criticize her for putting on tefillin? And then what if, when you get to the next generation, her daughter and her granddaughter are already putting on tefillin? Are you going to tell the granddaughter who wants to be frum, wants to keep Shabbos, wants to keep kosher, but also wants to put on tefillin? Well, you can't be frum because you want to put on tefillin. These are the kinds of questions, and is it worthwhile for us? These are questions we have to examine, because maybe yes, maybe the answer is yes, maybe the answer is it's worthwhile to tell someone that, maybe it's not. These are battles we have to think of with intelligence. That's why in many communities we have this concept of Das Torah. But each community has to also answer. There can't be just this blind, well, Rabbi so-and-so said so, and that's the halacha. That's not, unless he can say either this is what's written, or this is a genuine tradition that I've received, and this is the reasons for this tradition, or this is the standard for our community. Saying that something is a standard for our community is 100% valid. Meaning to say this is our particular local custom, this is our particular local community, and these are the standards of our particular local community. That is always valid, because the Rabbanim have power on their own local community level. So for a local community to have their takonos and so forth, that's a very ancient practice, and that's a proper practice. That's really the way things should be. But we have to know who, what, where, when, why, how. It's not... Excuse me, I tried to hold that in as much as I could. And things do change over time. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that most likely certain things will change and certain things will not change. And certain things will become local community standards and yet will be acceptable within the Orthodox framework, and that does not need to lead to a schism. Sometimes there is need for schism. When it's over central ideas of Torah, then there is a need for schism, and it's proper to have a schism. Schism is not always a bad thing, because we sometimes weed out different things, but there can be local community standards that are not schismatic, and the thing is, someone who comes from one community or follows a particular community, even when they're visiting another community, or even when they move to another community, can, especially since we have more mobility these days, it is proper, for example, Green Osako. That is a proper standard, because there's so much mobility in our communities these days, and there are so many people who hold this standard. It is proper for us to be strict on it, even to cater to people who are strict on Chol of Yisrael. Glat is another example. This has become the accepted standard in most of the world. It is proper in order, and there is mobility, it is proper in order to embrace a higher common denominator. This is 100% proper. But it has to be with recognition of what's the law and so forth, what's kosher, what's treif, things like that. We shouldn't label things treif that are kosher. We also can say this is a suffix, this is a doubtful matter. There are different views on the matter. That's proper. So we have to. We also have to learn, how to do this. But the same thing, I can very likely see that it will probably happen in the not too distant future that sections of Orthodoxy will be, that even though it's already existing, but it's not so mainstream, but that aspects of egalitarianism will become more and more mainstream within certain factions of the modern Orthodox world. You will have different approaches within modern Orthodoxy, and if there is wisdom it should come to a point where this will be a same issue like machine matzah and like giving drushes in English and things like that, that eventually do change over time because of the realities of the time. And however, those who are strict are just as justified as those who are not. And there is room in the Jewish world for machine matzah and hand matzah. And for some people who will eat machine matzah at the Seder, some people will only eat hand matzah the whole week, and some people who will have hand matzah at the Seder and machine matzah all week. There is room for all of those different types within the Klal Yisrael. Just like there's room for shuls that have drushes only in English, shuls that have drushes only in Yiddish, and shuls that don't have any drushes at all. And just the same, there is room for perhaps opening up to more and more egalitarianism, precisely because Bisman Hazeh, this is a battle that has been lost. Just like essentially, even though most people will disagree on this issue, there is room for different opinions on Zionism. And many people will say that the anti-Zionist movement, they've lost the battle. It's not true. But those people who are saying that the anti-Zionist movement have lost the battle should not be so sure that the battle for egalitarianism has not been lost. And in a way, those who have fed into the idea that the battle for Zionism has been lost are partially responsible for the loss of the battle of egalitarianism, and therefore all this nonsense protesting against the women of the world, they're also nonsense. It's not so simple. Maybe maybe the strict anti-Zionists don't go to the wall. They already see the wall as desecrated. Because there's Israeli flag. Maybe this is a wake-up call. Is it really worse to have women laning at the wall when the Gemara says women could lane? When the chief rabbi of Israel, Goren, used to say that women could lane with a minyan of 10 women and say brachas and do everything that men could do and have a regular davening of just 10 women. That's what Rabbi Goren held, and he was the chief rabbi of Israel. Not that to me that means anything, but to them that seems to mean something, because they seem to care so much what the chief rabbis of Israel have to say about Gerus and all these things, which a lot of and then they blame the Haredim for this, when in actuality it comes from Goren's whole psak of turning around a Gerus, claiming that a Gerus was not kosher, and by that being makel to allow a mamzer to love a B'kal Hashem. Is there really any difference, Well, thank you for watching. God bless you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Yeah. All right. Thank you. That's my point. Is did we create this situation? Meaning, are people going to heretical movements precisely because of our insistence on practices that are essentially minhagim, mechitza, egalitarianism? The same thing with the 3 weeks, the mourning, and is that right? Is that wrong? Can we do damage control? Meaning, isn't it proper to have Orthodox rabbis in conservative stellars like it used to be for the purpose of damage control? The thing is, do many of these Orthodox rabbis understand what the damage control issues are? What are the essential issues of Judaism, or the matters of belief of Torah Sinai and so forth? Can we fit these things together? Meaning, these are issues that we have to talk about in an open, frank way. Meaning, to me, the divinity of the Torah is the main issue. The divine origin of Torah is the main issue, and if we look it's interesting how we tend to look the other way for blatantly big things. I mean, this is something I spoke to a Posek about, and he said he doesn't understand. This is a very frum Hasidic Posek, a Talmud of Satmar Rav, although he would say, Satmar has gone the wrong direction. This is how he would teach. But he's meaning they're not firm enough, or they've become too cultish and not authentic the way it originally was, and things. This particular Rav will teach, not in the way that most people who would say that those type of terminology would say it. And this tremendous Dayan, he said he doesn't understand. Like Chabad, they let people drive to shul, but they won't let a woman get an aliyah. Driving to shul is much worse than a woman getting aliyah, meaning, and yet we look the other way. People drive to shul on Shabbos, but so the argument is what happens in the shul and what happens outside the shul are two different things. And they're going to come to shul anyway. It's better they should drive to an Orthodox shul than drive to a non-Orthodox shul. But maybe would there be more people driving to the Orthodox shul if they were teaching Orthodox ideology but had less orthoprax, but nonetheless halachic practice? Who knows? Maybe and maybe there's room. Of course, it's not Chabad's job to give women aliyahs. Nobody is arguing that Chabad should have women giving aliyahs, but maybe there should be some new Orthodox Kiruv group which does so. Maybe there should be a new Orthodox Kiruv group that finds a halachic way to bring in egalitarianism. And this could this is not what everybody should do, but would it bring more people to orthodoxy and away from the heresy of Reform and Conservative? For sure, it's going to bring some people, and the question is it worth it for that? These are questions that have to be. And this place who I spoke to said yes. It seems like that. Bisman hazeh, the situation is different than it was 100 years ago. And there's not much difference, essentially, between the battles that the modern Orthodox choose to pick and the ones that they don't choose to pick. The Haredim are consistent; they don't change for the most part, although there are minor changes here and there. But the real Hamish, they don't change, and they maintain the old ways, and they are extremely successful, and they're much more successful than a lot of these other places. But maybe there's room for both, just like I said in the other video. Just like there's room, there is room for anti-Zionist Kiruv. There should be anti-Zionist Kiruv. Chabad sold themselves out. Chabad essentially are anti-Zionist, and they're trying to cover their tracks and pretend that they're really not anti-Zionist. They think it's not popular when they don't realize that there are many Yiddish neshamas that they would probably want to bring in, who they could bring in if they were teaching anti-Zionism, but because so many of the money comes from Zionist money, so they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and so that's why there really should be but there's room for both, because you need Zionist Kiruv and anti-Zionist Kiruv. At least that's what most people are going to tell you. Most people are going to tell you only need Zionist Kiruv and you don't need anti-Zionist Kiruv, because they want to get rid of anti-Zionism. But the thing is, they're claiming that every Jewish soul is needs to be saved and this and that, but those are not worth saving, meaning because they don't agree with Zionism. Those are the ones who are not worth saving. The ones who are Zionist are worth saving, but not the anti-Zionist ones. They're not the anti-Zionist, non-religious. Zionists are not worth saving. Many of those people are not anti-religious. Many of these people are turned off from Judaism because they associate with politics. I've seen it firsthand, but there's no money in that. And then there was this hope with this Open Hillel movement, and it just became an anti-Trump movement. It just lost their mind. This video is already too long. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Good Chodesh. Thank you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Be well. But the point is I want to bring out is we got to think about what we're doing. We can't just go blindly into the night, and think that, meaning if we can do kiruv, quote unquote. I don't like this whole idea of kiruv, this and that, but if we could be makarav more people with tolerating things that are essentially issues of minhag. I mean, it's upside down. We tolerate things that are obviously against Torah. Meaning, there are Orthodox Jews that are more comfortable with gay marriage than they are with giving women aliyahs. There are Orthodox Jews that are more comfortable with people driving to shul on Shabbos than they are with giving women aliyahs. I'm not going to turn someone away because they drive to shul on Shabbos, but just the same, we have to find a way. We have to understand who are we dealing with. I mean, in my community, our Rav, who's so intelligent, he told the people, he's like, in the summer, you want to have a conservative shul? He said, I can understand in the winter. But in the summer, when we have so many Orthodox people, you're shooting yourself in the foot. That's the intelligence of it, meaning, there's a time and a place for different things. There's a time and a place for what, where, when, how, and how to have the right influence on people. But a lot of people just don't. They're so close-minded on both sides. I mean, what the Reform and Conservative Jews, what is your purpose in this world? Especially the Conservative. The Reform, they're going to say their purpose is Tikkun Olam, which we could disagree with, but at least they feel like they're doing something. What even though they're really destroying the world, but they think they're doing something. I don't know what the Conservatives are doing, and that's why they're failing. I mean, it used to be in America the Conservative movement was the biggest movement, and Reform and Orthodox were small, even though most of the synagogues were Orthodox, but they didn't have that. But they were synagogues with 10 people, And now conservative is dying, and the reason is they have no purpose. And essentially, like my friend Rabbi Mesa says, does Judaism serve any purpose? Does even Orthodox Judaism serve a purpose if it's not just to preserve itself? And is that, and like his answer is, God will take care of preserving ourselves. We got to take care of doing our mission that God put us on, which is to be a light unto the nations, to change the whole world. And are we doing that? I don't know. I think to a certain extent we are, whatever it is. All right. God bless you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.